Hey guys, what's up? This is LJS here, and today I'm back with another deck profile. This time it's on the Aquaforce Thavas Stride build. I know some of you have been waiting for a long time for a deck profile on Aquaforce, and yes, I have been wanting to do this for a long time as well. And well, this deck has been done quite long ago, and I actually even used this deck for the nationals, which I covered previously. And well, as some of you may notice, the setup is slightly different. As I mentioned in my previous video, my deck profile on Sweep Command Dragon, I'm at a new place, and I'm just trying out different setups because I no longer have a nice, awesome window that has nice sunlight back from my old house. So let me know what you think of this setup compared to the Sweep Command setup, and let me know which one you prefer. Whether you prefer this setup like this, or the setup with the other table which I tried in my Sweep Command deck profile. So anyways, this was the deck I used for my nationals in UK. Although I did modify it because after trying out in nationals, I did find that some things I need to change, which I will go over as well. And so yeah, so let's get to the deck profile, shall we? So for starter, we run Officer Cadet Andre. Obviously, this guy is a really good card, so you run him. So his skill is basically Calm plus 1, sorry, Generation Break 1, Calm plus 1, and put him in the soul. And if you give one of your rear guards the skill that at the end of battle, this unit attack a Vanguard, you can restand it and give it 2k. So until end of turn. So this is a 1 to 10 skill. So basically, you give him put in the soul, gives another rear guard a skill that after he takes a Vanguard, he can restand and gains 2k until end of turn. So he's very useful to achieve multiple attacks, and if you combo him with another card, which is I think Magnum Assault, which I'll talk about later, you can actually achieve a lot of attacks with Magnum Assault and with Lambros, and which is going to be really, really crazy. I think you can do 4 attacks with him, and they're all really powerful. And if you have critical trigger put on him, you can deal even more damage. So yeah, this is a very important starter, very useful starter. Run him. Next, for the Great Trees, around 4, one who surpasses the storm, Thavas. So his skill is, basically, he is the new Generation Break 2 for Aquaforce. So his skill is, the first one, Generation Break 2. When he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, and he's the 4th battle of the turn, he gains a crit, and your opponent can call Great 0 cards from hand to guard. So basically, he's a Silent Tom with critical, and requires you to have 4 attacks and Generation Break 2. And his second skill is really, really good. When you strike on him, when a unit attacks the 4th, you can choose one of your opponent's rear guard and your sorry, my bad, wrong. Oh yeah, so when you stride, your Vanguard gets a skill is of when a unit attacks a Vanguard and it is the 4th battle of that turn, or 4th battle of exactly the 4th, choose 3 of your opponent's rear guards and your opponent chooses one of them to retire. So basically, when you strike one of your units, anyone, if it attacks the 4th attack of that turn, choose 3 of your opponent's rear guards and your opponent will then retire one of them. So he is very useful because right now Aquaforce, they can achieve 4 attacks easily, and you can consistently just retire your opponent's rear guards non-stop. So he's a very useful way to gain pluses. Next, I run 2 of this Strike Head Dragon. So Strike Head Dragon is your alternative grade 3 to ride in case you miss Thavas. So his skill is basically Generation Break 1. When one of your units, when your rear guard attacks a Vanguard, if it's 3rd battle of that turn or more, it gains 3k. So it's not really exactly that special, but at least, you know, if you misride Thavas, you ride into him, at least your rear guards can hit for a bit more. And sometimes, you know, gaining 3k is useful because a 9k rear guard becomes a 12k rear guard, which can still hit a Vanguard, which is pretty good. And his second skill is when you ride him, Counter plus 1 and Soul plus 1, and you can choose up to 1 card from hand, call it to R. And that unit will then get the skill of when it attacks, if it's the first attack of that battle of turn, you can restand him. So basically, you ride him, pay the cost, call a card from hand, and he gains a skill of when he attacks the Vanguard, restand him, if it's the first battle of that turn or more. So basically, for that turn, when you ride him, you are able to give one card the ability to be an attack enabler, so you can achieve 4 attacks. So this is on ride skill. So basically, when you ride him, and you use his skill, you can then stride on top of him. You can use the stride, and then you can use the stride effects, which is pretty good, I guess. And I run him instead of Max as this other guy, rare card Max, because I think it's a bit more useful. At least, you know, your rear guards can hit for higher numbers, whereas Max, all it does is sort of just switch place, which doesn't really do much, I think, because sometimes most of the time when you switch place, you probably already have used them to boost, or I know it just doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really work that well, so I run him instead. Next, I run 2 cards, which is very, very amazing and awesome. 2 Glory Maelstrom. So, this card literally won me games many times, because his skill in combination with another card, which I explain later, will win games. So basically in the Nationals, I used him against the Cross, and I won. So basically, it was a really tight game. I was sort of falling behind, but due to his skill, his skill combined with another skill, I was able to win. So what is his skill? His skill is Ultimate Break, Limit Break 5, which means you must have 5 damage. Counter plus 1, okay? When his unit attacks the Vanguard, you can pay the cost. If you do, he gains 5k, and your opponent cannot call Grade 1 or greater to the Guardian Circle from his hand. His second skill is a Crossfight skill, meaning if you have Maelstrom installed, he gains 2k, but that doesn't matter because you don't run Maelstrom in his deck. So his first skill, you must have 5 damage, and you can count plus 1, he gains 5k, and your opponent can't call Grade 1s. Later on, there will be another card which I explained, in which your opponent cannot call Grade 0s. So when you combine them two, your opponent can't guard at all. So if your opponent's at 5 damage, you win, essentially. So, very good card. Use him. Next, for Grade 2s, I run 4 of another very key card, Magnum Assault. So his skill is really good. So once a turn, basically, when he attacks the Vanguard, and if it is boosted, you can counter blast 1, restand him, and he gains 2k. Now look at the last part of the text. The last part of the text says, even if you do not pay the cost, this skill cannot be used for the rest of the turn. This means that the very first instance that he attacks the Vanguard, you must use his skill. So you must be really aware of that, because the moment he attacks the Vanguard, if he is boosted or not, you cannot use his skill after this anymore. So you must use his skill the moment you attack the Vanguard. So normally what you do is you attack a rearguard with this. So normally when you have a turn with Lambros, which I explained later, you attack with him to a rearguard, and then restand him, then attack the Vanguard boosted, because the moment he attacks the Vanguard, you must use his skill. If not, you can't use his skill anymore. And he normally, when you do Lambros, one combo is to use his skill on him, and you can achieve 4 attacks with him, which is amazing, which I will explain later on, the combo and the awesomeness that you can achieve with this deck. Next, I run 3 High-Tech Sniper, 3 of them, because High-Tech Sniper is actually a pretty good card. So his skill is basically when he attacks the Vanguard, Generation Break 1, when he attacks the Vanguard, so when he attacks, doesn't have to be anything, if it's the 3rd battle of that turn or more, you can soul blast 1, he gains 10k until end of that battle. So he only gains 10k until end of that battle, so meaning that if you restand him, he loses the 10k because it only lasts for 1 battle. But it's good because when you combine him with Lambros and other shenanigans, he can hit for really big numbers. He can probably hit for like 31k. Yeah, he can even hit for 31k by himself, which is amazing. So run him, 3 of him. Next, I run 3 Couple Dagger Sailor. So he's the promo card. It comes with GPT-02, and I say that she is a very, very good card. Okay, a lot of people run Tidal Assaults, but I don't like Tidal Assault, because Tidal Assault, I think he's kind of sucky because he minus 5k, and he does allow you to have multiple attacks, but it's not effective. Nothing hits because he's 9k at first, and he loses 5k, he becomes 4k, which doesn't hit anything. So I use her. So her skill is basically, when she attacks a Vanguard, if it is the first battle of that turn or more, you can counter plus 1. If you do, she gains 2k, and at the end of the turn, we can swap her with another rearguards behind her. So basically, for example, you have like something like this. Okay, she attacks first. Of the first attack of the turn, counter plus 1. She gains 2k, so she is now 11k attacker, which hits a Vanguard. Next, you can swap place with something else and swing. So at least now she hits numbers. Even though it's counter plus 1, I'd say that she's very good because she's very, very reliable in number 1, hitting numbers. So at least she's 11k attacker, so she can hit a Vanguard. And number 2, you can swap place and have something else attack, which enables 4 attacks in your turn. And she's now at the back, which means she is protected from attacks. So yeah. Next, I run 2 Tidal Assaults. Basically just 2 because as a backup resender. I think he's inferior. She's much superior to him, but he is still quite useful. So basically, when he attacks Vanguard, you can restand him and he minus 5k. So The problem I find with him is that he is very weak. He's a 9k base, and he minuses 5k to restand. And most of the time, what people will do is that he will swing for 9k to Vanguard, and hits nothing, restand, so he's 4k now, and boost him with the same k, so he's 11k, so at least he hits the Vanguard. Now that's 2 attacks, but only 1 hits. Now imagine if you run Cardfight Seller with, let's say, 11k attacker behind him. You swing for the Vanguard, swap place, and at least he can hit the Vanguard. Or even if you use a 9k, let's say grade 2, you swing for 11, hits the Vanguard, swap, 9k at least can still hit a rear guard. So yeah, I think it's much better, I guess, in that sense. Because let's say you use him, you boost him, 16k to Vanguard, he's a Vanguard, restand, now it's 4k. 4k, he can't even hit any rear guard at all. And let's say you hit 9k to Vanguard, doesn't hit anything. Restand, boost by 7k, 11k, doesn't hit, he hits the Vanguard, and that's it. So his attack, he only allows you to have 2 attacks, but only one of them actually hits. Unless of course you boost him with power from, let's say, the draw trigger skill, but it requires you to use other people's skill. So I'd say that she is very good, really good, because yeah. And she has helped me win games as well, because I managed to use her to rush. So grade 2 rush is also a very good way for Aquaforce to win. Anyways, enough about that. Let's get to the next cards. For grade 1, I run 4 PGs. I do not run the GPG. I used to run the GPG, but turns out it was a bad choice, because in the Nationals, I ran GPG. I was up against the Cross, and I could not guard my rear guards. And since Aquaforce is a rear guard dependent deck, you want to actually have PGs to be able to PG your rear guards. Even though you don't get the unflipping of your damage, it's fine, because this deck doesn't actually counterblast that much. So I think having normal PGs is much better, because you have the flexibility of guarding your rear guards. Next, I run 4 of the Strike Fathers, so he's useful because basically you can discard him to Strike, because he counts as grade 3. And his first skill is when you call him, you can reveal a grade 3 in your hand. If you do, search your deck for a Thavas, put it in your hand, and discard a card. So he is useful to in case you rewrite the wrong grade 3, you can still use him to search for Thavas and write Thavas. Next, I run 3 of a really awesome card as well, Battle Siren Stacia. So she is one of the MVPs of this deck. I really love her. She's so good. So her skill is Generation Break 1. During your turn, she gains a skill of, basically, she can attack from the back row, and when she attacks from back row, she gains 3k. So she is 6k base, but when she attacks from the back row, she's a 9k attacker. Which means that in the back row, you can use her to snipe your opponent's grade 2, which is really annoying. So your opponent will be like, oh my gosh, she's so annoying, but she's so good, because she allows you to get rid of grade 2s and still achieve multiple attacks. Next, I run 2 of the Swim Patrol Jellyfish Soldier, yes. Initially, I ran this Assassinate Sailor, which is this card, Assassinate Sailor, but I find that I never use a skill at all, so I think it's pointless to run her. So instead, I decided to run Jellyfish Soldier, because she allows you to unflip damage. So when you call her, Soul plus 2, unflip 2 damage. So yeah, as I mentioned, this deck doesn't really use that much on blast, but if you need to unflip, at least you have her to unflip damage. Hence, you don't actually need to run GPGs anymore, because you have unflipping options. Next, for triggers, I run 4 Supersonic Sailor. So he's another of your unflipper. So his skill is put him in the soul. If you do, unflip 1 damage. So only use his skill if you really need to unflip damage, because he's a -1. So next I run 4 of one of your MVPs as well. Blue Storm Marine General Despina, critical trigger. So she is the card I mentioned that combos really well with Glory Maelstrom, and it basically kills your opponent. Her skill is basically when she boosts a Vanguard with Maelstrom in its card name, if it's the 4th battle of that turn or more, your opponent cannot call grade 0s from hand to Guardian Circle. And at the end of the battle, return her to your deck and shuffle the deck. So if you combine her with Maelstrom, he says your opponent can't guard with grade 1 and greater. She says your opponent can't call with grade 0 or lower. Basically, that means your opponent can't guard at all. So which means GG, your opponent just dies if he's at 5 damage. That's what happens, I used this against a DX, and I won because of that card. So awesome. Next, run 4 of Battle Siren Malika. So her skill is basically when you put her in your soul, give something 3k. So she is in there as a backup in case you need to pump up your rear guards for power. For example, this guy, he is quite weak in terms of power, but with Malika, put her in the soul, he gains 3k. So at least now all of his attacks hits. So swing for 12k to Vanguard, withstand minus 5k, now 7, boosted, also hits 14, which still hits Vanguard. So at least, you know, at least now it still hits numbers. So she's useful to help you hit numbers because sometimes your regards can be a bit weak. And next I run 4 heals. Yep. Now for the stride units, I run 2 Tidal Boar, which is the guy from the trial deck. So he will be your first stride. So his skill is basically when he attacks a Vanguard, if it's the third battle of that turn or more. When his attack, my bad. When this unit attack hits a Vanguard, if it's the third battle of that turn or more, you can draw a card, and you may choose one card from your hand and call it to R. So he is actually a very useful first turn strike, because sometimes when that early in the game when you strike, you may not have the pieces you need on your board to do 4 attacks. So sometimes you just ride him, use his skill, and if he hits, use his skill to draw a card. And sometimes it's also worth it to just call some random card on the field just to get the 4th attack to use his skill to retire. Because basically, in a sense, if you do that, let's say for example you draw a heal trigger, just call it out, swing to Vanguard, and activate Thavas skill to retire. So in a sense, his skill becomes a +1/-1. So even though she's a crappy rearguard, at least you know you retire one of your opponent's rearguard, which is good. So yeah. Next, I run 4 Lambros. So Lambros is the star of this deck. He is a very good finisher, and your opponent probably will not survive him at all because he's really good. So his skill is basically, when he attacks the Vanguard, if it's a 4th battle of that turn or more, you can persona flip, basically flip one of him face down, face up in the G zone, and restand 2 rearguards. Okay, restand 2 of your rearguards. And if you have 2 or more G units in the G zone, those 2 units gain 10k. So he is actually quite versatile. You can actually use him as your first strike if you want to, but of course you will miss out on the 10k. But using him early game can be beneficial, but it all depends on the situation. But most of the time you use him as your second or later strike, because then you can activate his second skill, which gives your 2 rearguard you restood with 10k, which is very good. So now imagine this situation with him, okay? With Magnum Assault. As I mentioned earlier, you can use his skill combo with him and him to achieve 4 attacks with him. So use his skill from the soul, give him that ability. Now swing first to a rearguard or something like that. So there's 1 attack. Swing with him, use his skill to restand, gain 10k. Now then you use his own skill, attack, restand, that's number 3. Then he attacks again, use the starter skill, restand. Now attack again. So that's 4 attacks in total, and it is an incremental power. So first he swings for 9k, then eventually he swings for 19 or more, and then 21, and then 31 or more, or something like that. So yeah, basically he hits for big numbers, and he swings for 4 attacks, which is amazing if you're able to combo him, and starter. So yeah, that's very good. Next, I run one of this from the Fires collection. So he's a new card I added into this deck because he's from the Fires collection. So his skill is basically when one of your unit attacks a Vanguard, if it's the 3rd battle of that turn or more, you can counter +1 and it gains 5k. So basically anything that attacks the 3rd battle or more, anything, you can pay the cost, and that unit gains 5k. So he is actually quite useful as a sort of power beater. So in case your opponent sort of like survives your Lambros onslaught and all that stuff, at least you still have him to allow you to push with power for every attack. So he's really good. So he's a very situational card, but I think he's quite useful. So in case you need to use him, so run him. And lastly, I run 1 Snow Element Blizzard. So his skill is basically when he attacks Vanguard, count +1, flip one of your G units face up, and he gains 5k for every face up unit in your G zone. So he's basically also a useful finisher. So yeah, so this has been my deck profile of my Aquaforce Lambros Strike deck. It is a really strong deck, really powerful deck, and right now it's one of the top meta decks. And it is very good at aggression, and basically your opponent won't be able to survive because everything sort of hits, and you know your opponent will be facing a lot of damage and stuff like that. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up if you like it, and if you like my content, do subscribe. And this has been LJS, and I'll see you guys next time.